Hello students. So here today we are going to revise the chapter that is life processes. So you might be having some doubts regarding this chapter. So I thought to make a video for your doubt clearance. Okay. So in online class we have already gone through this chapter. We have completed the class test also. Even we have completed the revision also. Then too I feel that some may be having some doubts. Okay, so because of that I am revising this chapter once again. So let us come to the chapter now. So chapter is life processes. Already you know that. What do you mean by life processes? So the processes which are necessary to survive, okay, to any organism. You take any plant or you take any animal, okay, you take any uh, living organism. Okay, so for that living organism, for survival there are some metabolic reactions or metabolic processes which are required to survive, and that processes we call it as what? Life processes. For example, you take digestion as a life process, respiration as a life process, excretion as a life process. Okay, so even in other organisms there is a digestion, or we call it as nutrition, respiration. Okay, in even plants also there are some processes which are going to take place for survival of the plant. So that processes we call it as what? Life processes. Okay, so in that first we are going to talk about the nutrition and respiration. We are going to talk about what? Nutrition and respiration. So what is nutrition? Nutrition refers to what? The organism which are going to take food, okay, for their survival, for producing the energy, that we call it as what? Nutrition. So based on that, or based on the nutrition, organisms are broadly divided into autotrophic organisms and heterotrophic organisms. So autotrophic organism means auto refers to self, trophos refers to nutrition. So they are self nutrients, means the organisms can able to prepare their own food. Okay, and they are not dependent on the other organisms. So such organisms are called as autotrophic organisms. And heterotrophic organisms, hetero refers to they are dependent on others. Okay, other organisms for the food. For example, we human beings are heterotrophs. We are dependent on the other organism. For example, we are dependent on the plants. We are eating the plant products. We are eating the animal products, right? So based on that criteria, we have broadly divided the organisms into autotrophic and heterotrophic. Again, in heterotrophic we have divided the organisms, that is parasitic organism, okay, saprophytic organism, and holozoic organisms. Okay, parasitic organisms means the organisms which are depending on the host body. Okay, and saprophytes which are depending on the dead and decaying organic matter, for example fungi, right? And some of the decomposing bacteria that are also we consider, that is what? Saprophytes. Again, uh, holozoic organisms, for example human beings and amoeba. These are what? Holozoic organisms. Holozoic organisms are organisms those who take the food in the form of solid. That is what? Holozoic mode of nutrition. So that is what in brief we are going to talk about nutrition, and then we are going to talk about respiration. So let us start with the nutrition. So nutrition already we have discussed, that is mode of nutrition, autotrophic mode of nutrition, heterotrophic mode of nutrition, and types of heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Already we have discussed in detail, and just now I have briefed up about the types of nutrition. So first of all we'll talk about the holozoic nutrition in amoeba. So amoeba is a unicellular organism, you know that. Okay, so amoeba is a unicellular organism. Amoeba is not having any what we call as organ level system, or what we call as organ system of body organization. It is not having a particular digestive system or respiratory system or excretory system like what we are having, right? So how it takes place, how the nutrition takes place in amoeba. So there are 5 steps mainly. Already we have discussed. That is ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and egestion. Okay. So what is ingestion? Ingestion means amoeba takes food in. That is with the help of what we call as the finger-like projections called pseudopodia. You know that pseudo refers to false and poda refers to feet. Already we have discussed this. And it takes the food inside, and then what happens? Then the amoeba has to digest the food. So how amoeba will digest the food? We are having a particular digestive system. In that digestive system the food is digesting. But in amoeba there is no such digestive system. So that time when the amoeba absorbs, amoeba when it is taking the food with the help of pseudopodia, along with that little amount of water is also absorbed by the body surface of the amoeba. That time with the help of this water, amoeba will create a temporary food vacuole or temporary what we call as stomach. Okay, that is called as food vacuole, that is food plus water, and that creates what? A temporary stomach for the digestion. In that stomach, now the digestive enzyme means enzymes already made up of what? They are proteins. Already we have discussed that enzymes made up of proteins, and that enzymes are biocatalyst. Okay, enzymes, what is the meaning of enzyme? Already I have told you. The enzymes will increase the rate of reaction. Okay, rate of biochemical reaction. For example, a simple chemical reaction, if you consider, the reactant is going to convert into a product. Okay, so that will take a long time. If suppose there is an enzyme that is called as biocatalyst, if enzyme is present, the same reactant or what we call as substrate will convert into product within a short period of time. The time taken for conversion of substrate into product in the presence of enzyme is short. So that's why it decreases the what we call as time and increases the rate of reaction. So that is what the digestive enzymes present in the food vacuole will act on the food present in the what we call as food vacuole, and they convert the complex food into a simpler form. That is what the digestion. Okay, and the digested food is now has to be absorbed by the amoeba. How it will be absorbed? So that is with the help of a simple principle called diffusion. That is with the help of what? Simple principle called what? Diffusion. What is diffusion? Diffusion is the random movement of the substances from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. So it may be a solid, it may be a liquid, it may be a gas. Okay, so what is present in the food vacuole now? That is a food. So that is a solid. So now the food will diffuse into the cytoplasm of the amoeba. How? From the region of its higher concentration. That is higher concentration in the food vacuole and lower concentration in the cytoplasm. So from the food vacuole to cytoplasm, the food will move from food vacuole to cytoplasm. That is what the diffusion takes place, and with the help of diffusion the absorption takes place. And after that, the assimilation, utilization of digested food. So how utilization takes place? Utilization for the what we call as reproduction of the amoeba. Amoeba reproduces with the help of asexual reproduction, that we are going to study in the next chapter. That is how do organisms reproduce, right? So that chapter we are going to discuss about the reproduction in amoeba. Now after digestion, absorption takes place. After absorption, assimilation takes place, and finally the egestion. Egestion means the undigested food or undigested waste which is to be expelled out of the amoeba. That is also with the help of what? Pseudopodia, and the unwanted food is to be what? Thrown out of the amoeba, and that is called as egestion. So this is about what? Holozoic mode of nutrition in amoeba. So I hope you're clear now. If suppose you are having any doubts regarding the holozoic nutrition in amoeba, you might have got an idea, right? So next we'll move to the nutrition in human beings. Okay, so this is the process. Okay, earlier diagram also, it is about the steps of the holozoic nutrition in amoeba. Next. So this is human nutrition. Human nutrition is also what? A holozoic mode of nutrition. So before that, we have a digestive system, or in this digestive system, the alimentary canal is going to play a very important role, which will be starting from mouth and it terminates or ends at the anus. Okay, so from mouth to buccal, or mouth or buccal cavity, from buccal cavity to what we call as the esophagus, esophagus to stomach, stomachs to small intestine to large intestine to rectum, rectum to anus. So already we have discussed the digestive system or the alimentary canal. Now in this human nutrition, again the 5 steps, same steps what we have seen in the amoeba. The first step is ingestion, second step is digestion, third step is absorption, fourth step is assimilation, and fifth step is egestion. Okay, so there is a difference between ingestion and egestion, so don't get confused. Okay, so first of all we will talk about ingestion. So ingestion takes place with the help of mouth, teeth and tongue. So when the food is taken in with the help of hands, okay, that time the food is cut into the fragments with the help of teeth, and it is getting mixed with the help of tongue, and now the digestion process starts. Okay, digestion process starts. How it starts, we'll see. So digestion in mouth. So mouth intake of whole food, then the teeth will chew and grind the food, and tongue will what? Mix the food. Okay, and after that there is a secretion called saliva, which is secreted by the salivary gland, and saliva contains the enzyme salivary amylase, or it is also called as taline, and salivary amylase digests the carbohydrates and converts the complex carbohydrates into a simpler form. For example, converts the starch into maltose, that is a simple sugar. Okay, so this process takes place in the mouth. It means that digestion starts in the mouth itself. Okay, after that the food ball is created. Okay, the food ball is created, and the food ball will move slowly into the what we call as esophagus. From esophagus it will enter into the stomach with the help of peristaltic movement. What is peristaltic movement? The rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the inner lining of the alimentary canal, which will help to move the food into the alimentary canal. So it will enter into the stomach now. Okay, now next step is digestion in stomach. So digestion in stomach, I'll just briefly explain you, then we'll go for digestion in small intestine. So digestion in stomach, where the gastric gland present in the stomach will secrete a gastric juice, and gastric juice contains HCl, mucus and pepsin. So HCl usually kills the germ present in the food, and second function of HCl is HCl activates the inactive form of what we call as pepsin, that is pepsinogen into pepsin. So pepsinogen is an active form. Okay, when HCl will be present, the pepsinogen will convert into pepsin, and then pepsin acts on the proteins and it will digest the proteins. And what is the role of mucus? Mucus will prevent the what we call as corrosion, or it will prevent the damage of inner lining of the stomach by the HCl, because HCl is highly acidic. The pH of the HCl is nearly about 2 to 2.5. Okay, so that much highly acidic HCl may damage the inner lining of the stomach. That's why mucus will protect the stomach inner linings. Okay, so that is the main function of the mucus. Now here in the stomach, the protein is partially digested. Partially means incompletely digested or half digested. Okay, with the help of pepsin. Now the food will move into the small intestine. So in small intestine, what happens now? The small intestine is having a secretion of what we call as the pancreas, that is pancreatic juice, which contains a pancreatic amylase, lipase and trypsin enzymes. And another is bile. Bile, which is secreted by the gallbladder and which contains the bile salts and bile pigments. And what is the role of bile here? Bile usually converts the acidic food material which has come from the stomach into the small intestine. It will convert into alkaline, because in small intestine, if the food material is acidic, the enzymes which are present in the small intestine will not able to, or will be not able to what, digest the food which is acidic, because they are active in the alkaline medium. That's why the food has to be converted from acidic to alkaline. Next function is bile is having bile salts, and the bile salts will emulsify the fats. So what they do actually, the large fat molecules will be converted into smaller fat globules, and that is called as emulsification of fat. And that emulsification is done by the bile. Now, the bile has converted the large fat globules into the smaller fat molecules. And bile has also converted the food which was acidic into alkaline now. Now the pancreatic juice, which contains the pancreatic amylase enzyme and trypsin. So you might have got an idea by the name itself, pancreatic amylase. Pancreatic amylase, amylase, where you have heard the amylase? In the saliva. That is salivary amylase, which was acting on the carbohydrates. The same pancreatic amylase will act on the carbohydrates present in the small intestine. Okay, so carbohydrates which was present in the food which has come into the small intestine, and it converts into a smaller form again, okay, or a simpler form. Next, the lipase enzyme, which will act on the emulsified fats, because lipase enzyme cannot directly act on the large fat globules. For example, if suppose you have a large piece of food stuff, you cannot able to eat at once. So what you will do? You will cut it into pieces and you will eat piece by piece, right? The same way, a lipase enzyme cannot directly act on the large fat globule. So it will be converted into smaller pieces. That is with the help of a bile salts, right? So now the lipase will act on the emulsified fat and it converts into a simpler fat forms. And one more function of bile is the bile pigments, which will help to remove the toxic materials from the body. Now, finally, the intestinal juice, which was secreted by the intestinal gland, acts on the carbohydrates, fats and proteins, and finally the carbohydrates are converted into simple sugars, fats are converted into fatty acid and glycerols, and proteins are converted into amino acids, and these are the final products of digestion. So here the digestion is completed in the small intestine. After that, there is a absorption. Now absorption, large amount of absorption or large quantity of absorption takes place in the small intestine. You know, my dear students, absorption also takes place in the mouth, absorption also takes place in the stomach, absorption takes place in small intestine also. So that's why you might have observed that doctors used to suggest some chewable tablets. So why? Because in mouth also absorption takes place. Okay. So, but a large quantity of absorption will take place in the small intestine. Why? Because the inner lining of the small intestine is having a very minute microscopic hair-like structures called the villi or microvilli, which will provide a large surface area for absorption of digested food, and that absorbed or digested food will getting mixed into the blood. Okay, that is what absorption. After that, assimilation. So where does the assimilation takes place? Assimilation takes place, or why does assimilation takes place, or where it is utilized? Digested food, that is for the what we call as getting energy. So digested food is utilized to get the energy. So how does it is utilized. It is utilized by the body cells under the process called cellular respiration, where the digested food, which is in the simpler form, will be what utilized, and the energy is produced in the form of ATP, and ATP is also stored and utilized later. So that is what assimilation. For different metabolic processes, wherever required, the energy is utilized. And finally, there is a digestion. So undigested food now from small intestine will move into the large intestine, even large intestine, in which the large amount of water is reabsorbed in the large intestine with the help of villi, same as present in the small intestine. Okay, and even whichever nutrients which are useful for the body, that will be reabsorbed along with the water, and remaining undigested food is moved to the rectum, and that we call as a fecal matter. And from rectum, once the rectum is filled with the undigested food, the pressure is exerted from the rectum, and then it will be thrown out of the body through anus, and that is called as egestion. So finally, this completes the nutrition in human beings. I hope all of you have understood with the nutrition in amoeba and nutrition in human beings. Next, move to the nutrition in plants. So, sorry students, you might be feeling a little bit I'm going fast. Okay, but for a revision purpose, I have decided to make the video very short. Within a short period of time, some of the points I will highlight, which are very important points, so that will give you an idea about the concept. Okay, so next come to the nutrition in plants, that is photosynthesis. So photo refers to light, synthesis refers to prepare something. So by using light, the plants are preparing, that is nothing but the food. And mainly the plants are having ability to synthesize their food by their own with the help of the sunlight. Okay, not only sunlight, plants require carbon dioxide, chlorophyll, water. With the help of all these raw material, plants will be able to prepare the food by their own, and that is what the photosynthesis. Okay, now what will happen, how it will happen, that we will see now. So it may be visible to you, but just I wanted to give in detail structure about the photosynthesis or process of photosynthesis. Okay, you have studied the steps of photosynthesis. That is, first step is absorption of light by chlorophyll. Second step is light energy is converted into chemical energy. Third step is splitting up of water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. And then fourth step is reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. Right? So the same steps are explained here. So first of all, you might have observed in that yellow box, there is a light energy. So light energy, by using the water, chlorophyll, okay, it will be converting into chemical energy. Okay, and then water is splitting up into oxygen and hydrogen. So from where we get the oxygen? Splitting up of water, not by the carbon dioxide. Remember this, students. Okay, splitting up of water molecule will give us oxygen, and oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. What we inhale the oxygen, which will be released into the atmosphere. Right? Next, that chemical energy. We will not talk about that NADPH, ATP. Okay, it is for higher classes. Just I wanted to give an idea about that. With the help of that chemical energy, okay, the chemical energy is utilized, okay, in the photosynthesis. And finally, what? The carbon dioxide is reduced into what we call as carbohydrates. So you might have seen that there are two words there. There is a light dependent reaction and light independent reaction. So commonly it is called as a light reaction and dark reaction. So light reaction means in the presence of light, or light dependent reaction where light is necessary, and light independent means where light is not necessary, where the reduction of the what we call as carbon dioxide into carbohydrate takes place. Okay, so that is what the steps of photosynthesis. So in detail about the photosynthesis, how photosynthesis takes place, structure of the chloroplast, and all in detail you are going to study in the class 11. Okay, so next we'll move to the respiration. Okay, so respiration, what are the process? What is actually respiration? Definition you know very well. Respiration is breakdown of food to release energy, that is called as respiration. But respiration we are having of respiration at two levels, that is one at organ level and another is at cellular level. Okay, so respiration, see how respiration process is completed. That is breathing, then gaseous exchange at lung level, then what we call as gas transport by blood, and gaseous exchange at tissue level, and cellular respiration. So this whole process we can call it as a respiration. Okay, so as I told you that breakdown of food to release energy, that is a respiration. Now how this organ level respiration is different and cellular level respiration is different, we will see now. So first of all, we have to understand the human respiratory system. So human respiratory system starts from the what we call as nasal cavity or nose or nostril. Okay, from a nose or a nostril, it will be, the air will be going into the nasal passage, from nasal passage to a trachea, from trachea to trachea will branched into what we call as the bronchioles and branched into the lungs. Okay, right and left lungs, and then bronchioles are again further divided into primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles, tertiary bronchioles, and at the tip of these bronchioles there are air or sac, air filled sac like structures, okay, or bag like structures called alveoli. And alveoli provides a larger surface area for exchange of gases, and below that there is a diaphragm. Okay, so please try to understand the human respiratory system, that is nostril, nostrils to pharynx, pharynx to larynx, larynx is voice box. Okay, what I am speaking now, that is with the help of larynx, and from larynx to trachea, and trachea are made up of cartilage, rings of cartilage, which will help to it will means in the absence of air also the trachea will not get collapse with the, because of cartilage. Okay, cartilage is a connective tissue. Last year you have studied in 9th standard. Please recall. Next, this trachea or a windpipe will be branched into what we call as the left and right lungs. And that bronchioles will further divide primary, secondary, tertiary, and there is the alveoli, and alveoli provides a large surface area for exchange of gases, and below that there is a diaphragm, and diaphragm will separate the abdominal cavity and the chest cavity. Okay, so next we'll move to the mechanism of breathing. So in mechanism of breathing, one figure shows inhalation and another figure shows exhalation. What is inhalation? Breathing in air which is rich in oxygen, that is called as inhalation. And what is exhalation? Breathing out air which is rich in carbon dioxide, that is called as exhalation. And in inhalation, what happens? In inhalation, the rib muscles get contract, rib will move upward and outward. Okay, diaphragm will move downward, it gets contract, and the volume of the chest cavity increases and the air get filled into the lungs. That takes place in the inhalation. In exhalation, opposite to inhalation, the rib muscles get relaxed, ribs will move downward and inward. Okay, diaphragm will regain its position. Okay, the volume of the thoracic cavity decreases and the air will be thrown out of the lungs. That is what? Exhalation. So that is about the mechanism of breathing. Now next come to the cellular respiration. So cellular respiration, why it is called as cellular respiration? Because it takes place in the cells of the body, that is called as cellular respiration. Now cellular respiration, where mainly the breakdown of food takes place in order to release the energy. So the glucose, if suppose a simple sugar, okay, C6H12O6 is the chemical formula of the glucose, right? So this glucose present in the cell cytoplasm will be converting into a simple form that is called as pyruvate or pyruvic acid, and this is not a single step reaction, my dear students. about 10-step reaction. After that, the glucose will, that is one molecule of glucose will convert it into two molecules of pyruvic acid, and the pyruvic acid is 3 carbon compound and glucose is 6 carbon compound. Now after that, this pyruvic acid, okay, this pyruvic acid, now it will enter into the two type of respiration. Either it will be entering into the aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration. How it is? So aerobic respiration takes place in different organisms and anaerobic respiration takes place in different organisms. For example, aerobic respiration takes place in human beings. Aerobic respiration takes place in the plants. Aerobic respiration takes place in some of the eukaryotic organisms. But anaerobic respiration, what is anaerobic and aerobic respiration? Aerobic respiration is a respiration in presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration, a respiration in absence of oxygen. Understood? Now, where the oxygen is not required, there what we call as the anaerobic respiration, and where the oxygen is required, there will be aerobic respiration. Now the process of conversion of glucose into pyruvic acid will take place in the cytoplasm of the aerobic organisms and anaerobic organisms. But after that, the aerobic organisms in which the pyruvic acid will be converting into energy plus carbon dioxide plus water, and the energy in the form of ATP molecules, that is adenosine triphosphate molecules, and these adenosine triphosphate molecules will be stored in the mitochondria for further use, and that's why mitochondria are referred as powerhouse of the cell. And ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, can be broken down, that is in the form of ADP plus inorganic phosphate, that is adenosine diphosphate and inorganic phosphate, and it can be utilized, and that is what ATP is utilized. When this ADP plus inorganic phosphate is combined, that ATP is formed. Okay. In anaerobic respiration, what happens? Pyruvic acid will convert into ethanol or lactic acid plus ATP and carbon dioxide. Okay. And when the pyruvic acid will be converting into ethanol, it is called as alcoholic fermentation. And when the pyruvic acid is converting into lactic acid, it is called as lactic acid fermentation. So this conversion of pyruvic acid into ethanol, that is alcoholic fermentation, is having an economical value. That in the beverage industry, in the bakery industry, this process can be utilized in a large scale, and this process takes place in the anaerobic organism, that is a yeast cell. Yeast is a eukaryotic unicellular fungi. Okay, in such organisms the alcoholic fermentation takes place, that is anaerobic respiration, and that yeast cell will convert the glucose or a sugar or a substrate provided into ethanol or alcohol, and in such cases the beverage industry is utilizing the yeast. The scientific name of the yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Okay, that will be utilized in a broad manner, okay, for a large production. Next, lactic acid. So lactic acid is actually, this lactic acid fermentation also can be utilized for the industrial purpose where lactic acid is produced. But in our body, in the muscle cells, okay, in animal, okay, in the muscle cells, when glucose will be converted into pyruvic acid and pyruvic acid will be converted into lactic acid, when it will convert in the lack of oxygen. For example, if you are running, okay, you are performing any heavy work, that time you will have a muscle cramps. So when you have a muscle cramps, what does it mean? The lactic acid accumulates, okay, in the muscles, and because of which there are muscle cramps. And for that, when you take a hot water bath or when you just take a rest, again your muscle cramps will get relaxed. Means again the lactic acid will be converted into what we call a simple form, and you will get relaxed. Okay, that is what in presence of oxygen, in absence of oxygen, in lack of oxygen. So you have a flow chart, that is oxidation of glucose in 3 different pathways. Okay, so that is in presence of oxygen, which takes place in the mitochondria, in the absence of oxygen, which takes place in the yeast cell, and in lack of oxygen takes place in the muscle cells. Okay, and this is about the cellular respiration. And in cellular respiration, the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, if you try to differentiate, aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. Amount of energy produced in the aerobic respiration is more compared to amount of energy produced in the anaerobic respiration. Okay, in the figure you might be observing that in anaerobic respiration nearly about 2 ATPs are produced, and in aerobic respiration about 30 to 36 ATP molecules are produced. Here 30 to 32 they have given, but nearly about approximately 30 to 36 ATP molecules are produced in the aerobic respiration. Okay, so this is about cellular respiration. I hope students, you might have understood the nutrition, that is autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition also. Again, in that we have studied photosynthesis, we have studied holozoic mode of nutrition, and then we have discussed about the breathing mechanism, human respiratory system, and cellular respiration. I hope your doubts are clear now, and you might have understood the concept clearly. And if you're having any doubts, you are free to ask in the online class. So today I will stop here, and the remaining concept after this will be continuing in the next video. Thank you, students.